smile through. Good morning to you.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining. Hope you got your tea or coffee in hand. Welcome to Simon's quarterly virtual coffee presentation. So let me just make sure all my tech is working. I think we're good. And let's do the screen share. Okay. So today's agenda, we're going to go through the investment market performances and also an additional table we're going to look at, which is historic returns and some ranges of worst case and best case, which I think is timely to look at. I'll explain why shortly. My 5 favorite tech, money, travel, finance tips to go through, or apps rather, that I like, and finishing off with a little bit talking about the estate planning, and more specifically digital estate planning, which is becoming more and more of an important issue these days, given the amount of time we spend online and all the things we do online. So let's start with the financial market returns. This is the quarterly report from our head office team at FYG Planners. And it's always just a good sort of broad overview of what's been happening. Again, as I always say, stressing that 1 quarter or 1 year doesn't make an investment strategy. It doesn't make a process or a channel for making long-term decisions, but certainly it's still relevant to have a look at as to the general trend or direction of what's going on in the world. My computer is going very slow, of course, because I am running a Zoom. So appreciate your patience. Hopefully it's going to load. While that's happening, there we go. Thank you, web browser. Okay. So yeah, this went out, I believe, last week or the Friday before on our weekend copy break. So hopefully it looks familiar. Again, I've just highlighted a few key points. Pretty strong quarter for returns, as it says here, across all asset classes. And bond markets as well had a good run, because in most places around the developed world, the US, Europe, or UK as well, they're cutting rates, and that's generally good for bond prices. The Reserve finally Federal Reserve in the US cut rates in the September quarter, which is well publicized. And the other thing to mention, I've highlighted here, the emerging markets space, where for many of you, we've introduced specific exposure in your portfolios and strategy, has again been running pretty strong as well. So that's been so far so good. The other points to highlight, and we'll get onto the table in a minute. Inflation in Australia is compared to a year or two ago or 3 years ago, when we came out of the huge spike from lockdowns, running not at the target of the Reserve Bank, but getting closer. So the annual inflation rate of 3.8%, trending in the right direction. In Australia, not such bright outlook for rate cuts if you're a borrower of money, such as a mortgage. No change here, and the general view is possibly next year for rate cuts. So less of an issue for those of you that have money in super and savings, etc. I'm going to jump to the other page for the asset class returns. Need to have some of that hold music while we're waiting for the pages to load, like when you're in the elevator and it's going up on all the different floors, the old school department stores. Anywho, we made it. So this is, again, table should look familiar. A table of returns from all the main asset classes or building blocks in your portfolios. The right-hand side, from domestic property across to the right, are the growth components of the portfolios. I've graded or highlighted the 10-year numbers. Again, when we're building strategies for most people, we generally aim to have at least a 7 or 10-year horizon for expectations around returns and risk, etc. So sort of the 10 years a good benchmark or milestone. In terms of the more recent changes, the 1-year line tells an interesting story. And what I've done is, well, let's just start with, for example, global shares. You can see to the end of September, they returned, let me just zoom the screen a bit, 23%. So by all accounts, a very strong period, again, of returns. What's interesting is Aussie shares have now caught up. So the benchmark, the ASX 200, almost on par in the last 12 months in terms of returns with global shares, which wasn't the case when we did our quarterly review in June. And I've just taken some excerpts here of our last virtual coffee, just by way of comparison, 30th of June, and domestic shares here where my cursor is, 12.5%. So roughly a sort of a one third underperformance in the 12 months for Aussie shares versus global. That gap has now closed, which is good news, because all of you have a fair chunk of Australian share exposure in your portfolios, as you can see, almost on par on a 1-year basis. Still on the 10-year basis, there's a significant gap between global and domestic shares, and that's mainly, as I mentioned before, because of the concentration of, or the lack of some of those growth sectors in Australia that have been driving global shares, particularly US shares, and namely tech, the Magnificent Seven or the FANGs or whatever acronym you want to call it. So that's probably the main trend change, if you will, in the shorter term, is that Aussie shares are closing the performance gap, which is great news, and global shares continue their momentum. The other standout here as well in terms of direct exposure, as I mentioned, at the end of June, emerging shares benchmark had made about 12% for the 12 months. That's now 17%. So everything's firing pretty well on the growth side. Likewise on the defensive side, which is the left-hand side here, so cash and bonds, global bonds or domestic, pretty strong returns as well. So I think another way to look at this information is looking at the benchmark returns for a diversified portfolio. And the way we generally do that, just as a proxy or a guide, is the way we do that is looking at the Vanguard Growth 70/30 Fund, which is just a bit of a guide to what you might expect or what you would be seeing in many of your portfolios. Some people are more aggressive. In other words, they might have, instead of 70% in growth assets like shares, 80 or 90%. Some people might have less, maybe 50% or 60%. But again, we use this as a guide, and it's just a great resource to have on hand. I'm going to pull up the table, and this is to the end of September. So you can see here a 70/30 portfolio as a guide return about 18%. The last 10 years it's done just shy of 8%. And the last 5 years about 7%. So based on medium to longer term returns, it's been a very strong period to the end of September. Very strong. It's lots of good news at the moment. In spite of what's happening geopolitically and with elections coming up and uncertainty, the market seems to be just chugging on pretty strongly. So I think on that point, it's a good time to look at another chart, which is where did it go? Which is a good, I guess I would call it a, let me just find the page again. A perspective tool, perhaps. And we use this chart, particularly when we're bringing on new clients or a client is establishing like a new portfolio. You know, there's new money coming in or a new strategy. And it's sometimes good to think about history. No guarantee that it will always repeat, but just in terms of what you might expect going forward, because when things are going great, it's sort of fantastic to see that, but also important to keep in mind that periodically the market does correct itself. So what this table is below, let me just try to get see if that works. This is a table of, as it says here, I can't get the heading on the same page, but globally diversified index portfolio performance. So in a very similar vein to the Vanguard 70/30 tracker that I showed you, this is a similar thing. And the top half of the table, I'll try and zoom it a bit, make it a bit larger, shows you in the last 30 years to the end of September, to the end of August, sorry, to the end of August, the returns from a variety of different portfolios. So again, if we look at the third one down where my cursor is, 70/30, shows you over different return ranges what you've earned. So the caveat is the 70/30 we just looked at here was a different time frame. I'll come back to that in a sec, but more the point is not looking at the 1 year, but looking at the longer term, what one would have earned in the different portfolios. So again, if we just focus on 70/30, in the last 10 years, compound return of about 7.6%. So not dissimilar to what we just looked at with Vanguard, with the shift in a month of measurement, because Vanguard's to the end of September, this is the end of August. So useful table if someone's starting out or looking at you know, what kind of returns would I have earned by different portfolio mixes. The one at the top is the highest risk. 90 means 90% in shares, property, growth assets, etc., with 10% in cash and bonds. And as you can see, that's also the highest return. But there's a catch. If you scroll to the bottom part of the page, this shows you for each of those portfolios over the last 30 years, measuring every single month, rolling back 12 months or looking back 12 months. So there's, was it 360 measurement periods, the best and worst years. And I think this is important, particularly right now when things are going really well. It's also important to keep in mind that you can also have bad years. And in order to earn those returns we are earning now, you have to be prepared to ride those out. And hopefully this kind of work and analysis helps you mentally prepare for if and when that time does come. And I don't have a crystal ball. So again, looking at the 70/30, the best year it's had the last 30 years was up 28%. So, you know, pretty amazing number. But also you've had years when you've been down 23%. So if you're in a 70/30 portfolio, it's good to keep that in mind. If you've got a holding period of 10 years or a 10-year measurement, you can see that under no scenario in history have you ever lost money. And that's partly why we get back to, you know, try to aim for a 7 to 10-year horizon if you're starting today with new money, to have that appropriate time frame so that you're allowing for the ups and downs of the portfolio to play themselves out, such that the longer you're invested, the more likely you'll achieve your goal or a high probability of a better or positive result. So keep that in mind. If anybody likes that chart, when we do your reviews, remind me and I can roll it out. But I just think it's a great tool to show you how good, but also how bad things could be, certainly, you know, in the last 30 years. So that's the performance covered. Again, if you have any questions about your individual portfolio, please don't hesitate to drop me an email or the client service team, or book a quick call with me, etc. Book a call button on the website, or again, ask the client service team. So the next thing I want to talk about is some apps that I like to use. Let's start with we'll start with the first one on the list. Some of these might sound familiar. Some I've talked about in the past because they're great and we love using them as a family or as an individual. And so this one is the NRMA members app. The good news is if you're not in New South Wales, you don't have to join NRMA roadside. So this is kind of thrown in if you are a roadside member, but you can also just join this program. I think it's $5 a month. And they're nationwide, some of these deals. So I use this for basically anything that we transact in or a regular spending of. So a great example is Woolies, right? We do our major family weekly shop via Woolies. We always buy vouchers through the NRMA Blue or NRMA member benefit website. It's very straightforward, very seamless. Literally, you order it online, and then within about 2 minutes, the coupon, the voucher comes through. So that's just one example of again, like a no-brainer, right? Free money for a small cost of the subscription. In our case, as a family in New South Wales, because we have roadside for our cars anyway, this is actually a free benefit, if you will. We don't actually pay extra for this. It's just part of being an NRMA member. We took our girls to the Queensland theme parks in the Easter long weekend this year. They loved it. Again, you can see here, Warner Brothers, and we use this to save a good amount of money on theme park tickets. So, there's movies, there's all kinds of different discount shopping vouchers, etc. I won't jump into all the detail, but so number one pick for shopping and deals and everyday shopping experiences is NRMA Blue for sure. Next one is and again, if you're outside New South Wales, your state motoring body probably has a similar thing as well. Super Guide. So you might be saying, why is Simon telling us to read about Super? Because that's why we hire him. And that's a good point. But for those of you that want to read up or are just curious, or, we absolutely encourage and support and welcome our clients being educated and doing the research they'd like to do, because we're here to help in whichever style you like. Do it together, we do it for you. So the Super Guide is a really good website, plain English, not too technical. I use it for when I'm researching strategies or doing work on a particular query for a client. This is one of the main websites I go to. So yeah, if you're interested in knowing a bit more about Super, even if it's to ask me a question, jump on Super Guide. Fantastic. They've got a monthly blog, so free newsletter. They have periodic seminars and stuff. You can jump on to workshops and webinars. So that's one of my favorite money/finance apps. The next one is travel, which is this one here, Wise. So I know a lot of you like to travel, and one of the bugbears of going overseas is using your standard Visa card, etc., MasterCard, EFTPOS card, whatever, is the exorbitant fees when they convert currency back to your Aussie dollars. Not only do they charge a pretty big spread above the foreign exchange rate, sometimes up to 3%, then they charge you a dollar fee on top of that. So we're always looking around for competitive travel money cards. Until recently, as a family, we used Qantas Cash, or used to be called Travel Money, which was okay. Not the most competitive, but it was okay. Just again, sort of comfort factor. We liked using it. We got points as well, which is, some people value that, some people don't. I recently went to the US for a conference, very brief trip, 4 days in LA. It's all I could sort of get away time-wise, and I purchased this Wise card, or ordered it, and it worked really well. So why it's better than most other cards I've seen is the spreads, or the costs, are a lot lower. I was converting, I think, 1,000 Aussie dollars to US, and the fee was something like 0.2 or 0.3%. Whereas had I done the same thing on my Qantas Travel Money, or Qantas Cash as it's called now, it probably would have been more like 2%, so 200 basis points. So roughly this thing, from my use and my testing, is probably at least half the cost of any other travel card that I've used. In other words, half as cheap. Very seamless setup process, online straight away. Just got to upload current ID, and I instantly got an account and a virtual card for your Apple Money or Google Play, whatever it is. And then within about 3 days, I got one in the post as well. So highly recommend checking out the Wise card, you can have whatever it is, 10, 20 currencies on it. And the second you transact, you get a pop-up in your app letting you know what's happened if you take your money out of an ATM. So it's also very easy to monitor for, hacks and fraud, but also what you're spending. So check out the Wise card, our #1 pick for travel money. So that's yes, that's the travel one. And what else would have got to cover? Money Smart. Where did that one go? So disappeared. Let me find the agenda. We've done travel. Here we go, Money Smart. How are we going for time? Pretty good. So again, if you've been with us for more than a year or two as clients, you've probably heard me talking about this budget planner. Money Smart's the government or the ASIC run or government public run financial education website. It's great. There's like dozens of different categories and things on this. But again, classic example is when a new client comes to us, and one of the foundations of financial planning, as you would know, is figuring out how much is going in and how much is going out. And ideally, there's more coming in and being saved than what's going out, to put it very plainly. So how do you do that? Working out what you're spending. And this is a great tool to do that. The Money Smart budget planner. There's two ways you can do it. You can actually do it on the screen here and put all your information in, and then it saves it on the browser. In terms of security, what I like about this is you don't put any account numbers in. There's no links or data feeds to or sharing of any information. It's all done the old-fashioned way. You type it in. And why I like that, and maybe I'm showing my age, but I find physically writing stuff or reading and writing it in, it sort of reinforces it more in my head about actually what's going on, as opposed to just reading an app that, shows me a nice little pie chart of we're spending $400 too much on coffees every year or whatever it is. So, there's no right or wrong, but again, I like this because it's simple and it actually gets you thinking about what is going out and what is coming in as you're entering the information. It also has an app on the phone where you can add expenses in manually if you want. So that's Money Smart budget planner. There's also an Excel version here that you can download, as it says. So it may sound pretty simple and vanilla, but sometimes they're the best things. Sometimes complicated is not necessary. Nothing against the automatic apps. The great one I have used is Pocketsmith, which hat tip to one of our clients who I think is on the call today, that recommended it to me, and that's also good. But again, you've got to share all your banking information and give permission to the app to track all your transactions. For people that aren't comfortable doing that, this is a good option, because, as I said, you're not sharing any private information. So that's one of my favorite money apps. And last but not least is a tax and reporting tool. So this is, I'll go quick on this one because any of you that are on a wrapper service like Macquarie Wrap, they take care of the annual tax reporting. What I mean by that is if you are in a tax paying position or need to do a tax return, Macquarie will provide those reports. However, some of our clients still have direct shares, or like to have a few bits and pieces outside of what we're doing for them. And I personally have a share portfolio outside of my super, and the FYG evidence-based investment process, which we put our money where our mouth is. So a large part of my wealth is in the same models and strategy that your wealth is in. But outside of that, I've got a small share portfolio, and I find this tool, ShareSite, really good for two things. One, doing the tax reporting for me, and two, just tracking the performance, so I can play around with different time periods and benchmarking and all that fun stuff that I love to do as your advisor, not only for you but for myself as well. Fun and important, right? Because at the end of the day, we're here to help you create wealth in a sustainable way. So that's ShareSite for anybody that has a direct share portfolio and they might have a clunky spreadsheet, or looking for a quick and easy solution. Last I checked, it was free for up to 10 shares. So thinking of most of my clients out there, they'd probably be eligible, given the amount of shares they own in their portfolios, for a free version. So that's my number one pick for tracking performance, and it also produces a tax report. So like what you would get from a Macquarie or OnePath, share site can do that as well. So again, not saying this for what we're managing for you, but just if for those people out there that have some shares on the side and they're sick of just trying to manually assemble all the dividend info each year, that's my number one pick for housekeeping. Time going well. Next thing to talk about to wrap things up, but very important, is digital estate planning. So what are digital assets and what can you do about yours? This is also a little bit of overlap with cybersecurity and cyber awareness, and we are going through a major cyber security uplift at the moment in our business. We'll be communicating more on that in the coming months, but yeah, making a significant investment of time and money in making sure we protect you from your money and your private information from digital thieves and cyber hackers and all the bad actors out there in the world trying to steal your money. So quite a timely thing to be thinking about your digital estate. It's not necessarily financial, but there is an overlap. So what is a digital estate? As it says here, it's the main thing that comes to mind with most of our clients when we talk about digital estate is things like email, social media accounts, digital photos, and of course online banking is the big one as well in terms of actual financial risk. So the things that come out of this that you need to be aware is privacy concerns. You don't want people accessing that information, not necessarily after you're gone, but even currently, obviously, while you're here and alive. Financial loss, which I won't talk about too much today because we're well aware of that, but also sentimental value, right? So when you have passed on, if there's important photos and documents there, what do you do with that? Who knows about it, right? So on and so forth. So they're all really important things to think about. So with most of our clients, what do we see in terms of digital assets? So we're not talking about crypto here or NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Not saying don't invest in that. We don't. It's not approved from our side, and doesn't mean you can't do it. And we've got a couple of clients that own a little bit of crypto. Last I heard, but we're more talking about the everyday stuff that you're doing and how to prepare for that and be aware of it, or make your digital executor aware of it, right? Whoever's taking care of this stuff if something happens to you. So they're all the big ones there. I won't read them out line by line, but it's in some ways easy to forget all this stuff, or something can slip through, right? Like things like digital photos and videos, like that for us as a family, that's a massive job. If something happened to Ali and I today, and got hit by a bus or a plane crash, like we've got years and years and years of photos of as the girls are growing up, and we need to tighten that up. That's full disclosure. I could do some improvement on this as well. So yeah, we're only human and we get busy, and so I'm hoping that this topic will resonate with you, and likewise raise it with your kids, right? If you've got adult kids that are you need to be organized and think about this stuff. So what's a good plan? What can you do? Again, we can send this to anybody. Let us know, and email client service and they'll get you a copy. The obvious one, have a list of everything. Number two, and again, there's some overlap here with cyber safety, which is not a bad thing because we can't hear the warnings often enough. Check your privacy settings. Make sure that, yeah, you've got them, in our view, as tight as possible, as restrictive as possible. There's even digital asset management services. I don't know a lot about that, but if that's something of interest, I suggest you do some more digging. I know at a corporate level that's very common, but I imagine there's a retail or a personal solution as well. Is it in your will, right? So mostly we don't see that for clients on our estate planning for life service. We do have sections in there about passwords and accounts and how to deal with those. Doesn't really matter what format that you use. The main thing is that you are doing something, that there is a list and there is instructions for the right people. And that leads us to point 5, right? Make sure they know whoever it is in your world that is their job to look after you if something happens to you, or worse, you're gone, that they know where to find it, what to do, how to access the accounts, etc. And obviously keep an eye on it, right? So review it and update it and make sure it's part of the estate plan. So that's what a digital estate is. That's what a digital estate plan is. So it's sort of it tags onto your will, but I wouldn't even call it tagging on. I would call it a core part of your estate plan. Happy to have one-on-one conversations with anybody about this if you like, but hopefully there's heaps of checklists online and stuff. So as your advisor, we just want to make sure that all bases are covered, right? So you can minimize the stress when if and when something happens to you, etc. Just to make sure everything is covered. So really important, be thinking about your digital estate and what plan you have in place to address the different parts of your digital estate. Thank you. So we're right on finish time. Thank you for watching, everybody. Hopefully I've provided some things of interest. As I said, I'll just put the floor out to anybody who has any questions while I'm waiting. If there are any, I will. Let me think. I think that's pretty much everything. We've covered the areas. As I said, if anybody would like any of that information today, just email client service and we can get you a copy of the links to those apps or the article about the digital estate plan. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Welcome any feedback and see you in January for the December review, or might be early February actually, but we'll aim for as best we can. So thanks for watching, everybody, and have a lovely weekend.